You like it?
Look at you, not your first rodeo. Welcome, everyone. Today is February 13th. This is the Housing and Homeless Subcommittee meeting. We're calling it to order, and we're going to do a quick go around the room, say who you are, because there's some new faces in here. I know that's not on the agenda, but it's nice to know who you're in the room with. So, Kate Collin, Mayor Somerville, turn to my council
Rachel
member.
Kurtz, Councilmember Somerville. Hi, I'm Alexis Kaptanian, Housing Manager for the City of Somerville.
Good afternoon. My name is Micah Hinkle. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director.
Hi, my name is Andrea Visheshwar, and I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney for the City of Somerville.
I'm John Stefanski. I'm Assistant City Manager with the city.
Daniel Cooperman, Community Services Division Director for the city.
Mel Burnett, Senior Management Analyst with the Community Services Division.
I'm a BHRS Program Manager in our Crisis and Justice Involved Division.
And I'm Vincent, and I'm a BHRS Unit Supervisor for Care Court.
And you're are you part of this team as
Yes,
well?
I am. Yes, Michelle Funes, BHRS Division Director in the Crisis and Justice Involved Division.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here. We have a hefty agenda, which is the way that we like it, and we are delighted that you are here from the county to talk to us about Care Court. It's of interest to both council member myself as well as staff. So I'll turn it over to.
So I'll tee
Yep,
us off. This is a really great opportunity for us to have Michelle come in and do a presentation around their work at Standing Up to Care Court program here in the county. Lynn Murphy, we were trying to have here, but she's an all-day training, but I know that she has been in communication with Michelle and the team, and I believe was also working on working with you all with an individual earlier this week as well. So with that, I think we can hand it off.
The door has to
over,
stay open, please.
To you all for your presentation. So thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And just a couple comments before Emily gets started. I just would say, Care, we've launched, and you'll be hearing more about it. We're very excited about it. There are some misnomers that are out there, largely due to the way Governor Newsom talked about Care at the time of launch. And there's a little bit of a gap between what he was saying it would be and what it turned out to be in real life. So they're going to tell you about those, and we're happy to take questions at the end if you have any. I'll turn it over to Emily. Thanks.
We just have a really a pretty brief PowerPoint because we know there's a packed agenda and our time is limited. So we just wanted to start with kind of a lot of the basics and allow some times for questions at the end. So yeah, get right into it here. Okay, so the CARE Act stands for Community Assistance, Recovery, and Empowerment. These are the hallmarks of Care Court. The goal is to provide services to folks living with schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders. It's a civil court process, so this is not through the criminal court. There are no involuntary services. I think that was one of the pieces that got lost in translation as it got litigated through and then handed to counties to implement. So that was kind of what Michelle was referring to. There's not a lot of ability for us to make it involuntary other than our goodwill and ability to outreach folks and establish rapport and meet people where they are and use all of those tools that we have in our clinical toolbox to get folks to engage. It's a collaborative court process. There's a lot of community support, and we'll kind of go through the process a little bit more. This is just an overview. And as Michelle said, we implemented on December 1st. So eligibility, folks have to be 18 or older. That primary diagnosis of schizophrenia, spectrum, or other psychotic disorders is hallmark. So if someone has bipolar, they're not going to be a Care Court respondent. So this is really specific. It was really originally imagined to work with folks who were homeless and schizophrenic. The individual has to not be otherwise engaged in treatment voluntarily. And then from there, there's a care plan or a care agreement that is worked through with the respondent, with the court's support. And then there also has to be a determination of whether or not they would benefit from the process, or whether maybe some other service would be a better fit for them. Because we don't,
Sorry, Emily, I'll just
Please, yeah.
interject here that we are hearing rumblings from the legislature that they may expand the diagnostic criteria.
Good.
I think there's some awareness of a need for that. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
nope, that's, yeah, and please, any, jump in anytime, that's fine. Yep, next slide. So another one on who is eligible, at least one of the following is true. The respondent is unlikely to survive safely in the community, without deterioration. Or otherwise care court would be in place to prevent further decompensation, essentially. So it has to, it's kind of another way of saying that they would benefit from care court. Okay, next slide. The way that, there's any number of ways, that people can come to the attention of care court. And so these are the groups of, individuals or entities really that can petition, the court on behalf of a care respondent. So there's public, there's the county and the court. So really there's a lot of different inroads into care court. What we're seeing so far is a lot of loved ones petitioning care court, for their family members. And that's been really, and then BHRS, we at BHRS are also petitioning. That's been our primary petitions, although I think the court is probably going to get involved here pretty soon. There's definitely an element of care court being a diversion option, in some cases, a step up from AOT, a step down from LPS. So we're going to be working with the courts once we become up and running a little bit more, because it hasn't been.
Not everyone knows the acronyms in here.
I'm sorry, say.
AOT.
Oh,
LPS.
assisted outpatient treatment, which is really similar to care court, but has a larger front door around the diagnostic criteria, but is also a much, much smaller program in terms of funding and staffing.
And
So,
LGO is the Public Guardian's
Oh, yes.
Office, APS is Adult Protective Services, and LPS is the 5150 Lantern and Petrus,
we know that is.
process.
Yep,
Okay.
okay, yeah, thank you.
sorry about that. Yep, next slide. So this is obviously a really simple graphic here, but I mean, there's quite a bit to this, but there's the petition process, a series of hearings. It's determined whether or not the person is going to engage such that it might be an agreement, we're all in agreement about what's going to happen, or a plan is going to be when the judge actually orders it. Again, there's not much mechanism for us to force folks into treatment. We're hoping that the court order in and of itself, along with our robust outreach and engagement, will be enough to engage folks. And then there's the support itself, the treatment. So then we work with one of our BHRS full service partnerships to provide that treatment. So then that's where the support comes in. There's any number of other processes baked into this. This is just really, really simple. There's supporter roles, friends or family, loved ones can be involved in the process if the respondent wants. And then eventually there's a graduation whereby someone goes through the process and successfully completes care court. Okay, next slide. So housing. Care court does come with some housing opportunities. Bridge housing at Arrowwood is supportive transitional housing up to a year, services provided by Felton Institute. It's a bridge to permanent housing. That's the goal. And that is located in Santa Rosa. So we have yet to put anyone into that housing. It's not open yet. They're really close. We're also curious about how many of our Marin respondents are going to want to go to Santa Rosa. So that remains to be seen. We'll get there. We hope that will work for some folks. It is a pretty good opportunity for stable housing for up to 12 months. Other than that, what we're doing so far is leveraging hotel vouchers, stabilization and housing such as Casa Rene, and then getting folks onto housing in locations like Jonathan's Place when that's available. So far, we've engaged 8 respondents since December 1st. And we have provided 2 hotel vouchers, 15 nights in a hotel. 2 people have moved into Jonathan's Place. And so far, we've gone through the process far enough that someone is actually engaged in treatment with our FSP.
And I just want to say on the housing piece, I think this is one of the other sort of mixed messaging maybe. When this was rolled out, we heard this was almost described as a housing program. It was described as it was going to be the game changer, in addressing what we're all living with in terms of our unhoused population, folks who are not interested or engaging in treatment, that this was going to be the thing that was going to make a difference. I was very excited when he was first talking about this, and I was, yes, this is like what we need, right? And then when the details came out, I had to have my own grieving process. That there's nothing, it's very clear, in fact, it's in the legislation, it says nothing in this process will include involuntary psychiatric treatment like medications. The only piece that has a hint of involuntariness to it is that if someone is not successful in the care process within 6 months of that, the fact that they were unsuccessful, that information can be used in conservatorship proceedings. You can't be gravely disabled if you're not eligible for care court if you're gravely disabled, and you must be gravely disabled to be conserved. So it creates a bit of a catch-22. So there's been a lot of, I think, disappointment on the part of providers and loved ones that this doesn't have what we thought it was going to have. It's not going to solve our homelessness problem. You probably all know that already. That said, I think this team is like doing amazing work with what we have, because the targeted outreach, the really like meeting people where you're at, our philosophy is very much like, what do you need? You don't want to talk about medication? Okay, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about socks. Let's talk about, and really just starting to build that rapport and relationship and hoping that getting them come in to talk to the judge, hearing from us, seeing that we want to work with them, it will make a difference in some cases. I know it will.
We're using incentives and really, considering kind of the disappointment that Michelle spoke about. We really came as a team and as a team culture really came back to honoring the spirit of the CARE Act rather than the actual legislation of it. So really thinking about it from a purely treatment oriented perspective and meeting folks where they are. Okay, if they don't want this, let's find out what it is that they do want or need and just see if we can meet folks where they are. Be consistent in our outreach. A lot of programs have parameters whereby they might have to stop certain levels of engagement for non-participation. And so we're kind of seeing this project as a mandate, not so much on the individual, but on us as a team to keep trying. Up to a point, of course. We don't want to harass people if they're really unhappy by our presence. We
don't
will
want to put ourselves in danger.
Yeah.
People are.
Yeah. I mean, so far that, we're new, not to the work really, but to the program. And so we've kind of come up a little bit around some stuff like that where people are really not interested in engaging with us. But we're trying to do what we can and still offer some incentives and see if we can convince someone to get into some sort of treatment if they think they want it. So this is a really important slide. This is the resource. So the Legal Self-Help Center is helping us as well as the public to file these petitions because it can be a little bit of an intimidating process. It's a court document. It's a lengthy document. You have to have some collateral information if you're a family member or someone from the public petitioning the court. So here's all the ways to get support if you or someone is interested in petitioning on someone. Legal Self-Help Center is where it's at. So all the different ways, in-person, email, phone, and then Zoom drop-in clinics with the meeting ID and the passcode right there. So this is a really important slide. And then so is the next one, which has all of this same information, even though I wanted to distill it into one slide. This is our website that has all sorts of information on it. We hope to eventually add some data information on there. We have some data so far. We've only been at it for, a couple of months, but there's a robust state requirements for data. So we're going to have a lot of information on this at some point. We were originally, it was anticipated that our county, based on the cohort 1 counties that launched, based on the size of our county in comparison to other cohort 1 counties, that we might have 5 to 6 respondents in a year, and we have 8 in 2 months. So we're hitting it and really getting out there and doing what we can to bring this program to fidelity, given some of the restraints that were handed to us. So
Fantastic. No, thank you, Emily. That I'm sure we'll have a few questions. I'll start, Councilmember.
I
Questions?
do,
Yeah,
I
go
do
ahead.
have a couple of questions. Since we have such a limited number of finite beds. Of the 8 respondents who got placed in some of those local beds, can you go back to the housing at Arrowwood and why isn't that open yet?
Well, it's a contracting process with our adult system of care under BHRS. So a lot of it too has just been the contracting process of getting that building. It's kind of like a contractor timeline.
Yeah.
Is
There a
been
timeline
there's
now
been
to-
delays. You know, I think we're really close. I think they were saying February. It's like, okay, a few more things. So I think March is what they're projecting at this point. We've been on a tour. It's a large facility and we have 20 beds designated for Marin County. And so that includes care respondents as a priority of those 20. So we do have this as a resource. That being said, I think like I mentioned, we're curious to know how much willingness there's going to be to leave the county. And I think that Vincent and I have talked about how it would be our goal that even if someone goes to Arrowwood, if they want to come back to Marin, we're going to try to make that happen somehow. And at least then we'd have a little bit of time to work a plan around that. So far, our first couple of cases, we pulled from a couple different resources to patch together housing until we could get someone into Jonathan's place. And that included hotel vouchers and then Casa Renee and then into Jonathan's place. So that so far has worked surprisingly well.
Right. So when Arrowwood opens, that will be specific for those who are part of Care Court.
It will be, yeah.
Where
Not-
Jonathan's place and Casa Renee are open for potentially
Correct.
others.
The way that funding was given to us, and I believe it's 5 years and it's transitional, so folks can stay there for a year, 2 year. It's for BHRS clients and Care Court clients are to be prioritized. Meaning if it could be in theory filled with other BHRS clients. They're not going to hold beds for Care Court participants, but the language does say that care participants are to be prioritized.
Okay, great. And then the 8, I just want to confirm, so the 8 respondents that you've already worked with since December, those have already been designated as schizophrenic.
They're somewhere in the process.
Okay.
A few of them have, and Vincent, you can probably speak more specifically to the cases, but we have 2 that are very much in that process and several that are trailing along in the process as we work the different ways to determine eligibility.
It's actually a really small cohort, so we probably shouldn't say any more about the diagnostic breakdown of that cohort. Under 10, we really shouldn't talk about it, but they're in the process.
No, I mean, I totally understand, but we've heard that to get classified as schizophrenic is that's a long process in of itself.
Depends on their history.
Yeah.
Sometimes we know
Yeah, right
right
away.
away, and other times it may take some time.
Yeah.
And then do you
Hasn't been so far.
participate as part of coordinated entry and MASH? And this one, MASH, I don't remember the acronym for.
Support.
Okay, great job.
What was the question? I'm sorry. Do we participate in
You
those?
participate as part of coordinated entry and the MASH table, and maybe you could want to, for local intake, so that's with the professionals all around the table talking about various clients.
I don't
Right.
specifically. I think Vincent is in touch with them and we have a lot of other folks in our system that do attend those meetings. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Staff, other questions?
No questions, but just I think express some appreciation to you all because I've heard how heavy of a lift this was to stand it up in the time frame that was given to you all. And so to be up and running and to have, 8 people already going through and participating in the program, I just want to, hats off to you all for that.
Thank you. Yeah, Vincent is a new unit supervisor. We've been working together a lot in some other court context. And so it's been an easy transition for us to work together. And yeah, we're proud of that, because some of the criticism from the governor and other counties were that, the teams just weren't really going out and doing a lot of that searching. They were just sort of passively waiting for petitions. And we thought, well, shoot, we're going to try to work this thing as best we can. And so we are getting petitions from the public as well as we have our own internal list of folks that we're more than willing to petition on, see what happens.
And I like that you're really trying to lead with the intent of what care court was supposed
Yeah.
to be versus what it's on paper
Right.
right now.
Yep, exactly.
Because
Spirit.
many of these individuals would be in jail, would be placed in jail most.
Yes, yes.
All of them so far have had a history of jail.
Yeah.
So
Just
So
the right answer.
Two quick questions, one following up on Councilmember Critz's question about integration with the current system, because what I hear you saying is you are a separate team. So we've added a new team to the current safety net and continuum of care that's out on the street. Is that correct?
I describe it more as a new doorway. We link them to existing teams for ongoing services. So this is like a new door into the system.
Okay, because in San Rafael, as you know, we have Lynn Murphy, we have Safe, like we have a lot of doors that we put up. We're the only city in Marin County that have put up all those doors.
Mhm.
So you would say it that way. So it's not, when you're talking about your outreach team, you're working with them or through Safe. It's not necessarily you, it's not your.
Oh, it's
team.
us.
It's them
Oh, it's
doing
both.
the outreach. I think what I was referring to is if we are able to engage them in treatment, what that means they're connected to existing services. So we don't have a new treatment team, but we'd have a new door and that door comes with some outreach. And that is sort of like that door is a door that's going to be proactive in going out and trying to get people to come through the door.
So in that, I mean, we have the Mahone sanctioned camping area, so, and that has guardrails on who can go in there. So I'm assuming that you work with the appropriate guardrails if you need to go in there, or if there's someone on the street who might be moving around. Just, I guess, and you don't have to answer it now, but I know what Councilman Kurtz is getting after, because we have so many great programs here and we're always want to make sure they're integrated as best as possible. So there's not
Mhm.
duplicative efforts and everyone's on the same page. And I
Mhm.
hear that you guys got that. You're paying
I think
attention.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
I would imagine that there's certainly room for improvement as we continue. I mean, we're
Brand
still
new.
so new.
Yeah. Okay.
But we do have a team, Vincent, and we have a clinical psychologist, and we're at this point, we're all kind of doing a little bit of everything just until we can
Mhm.
really delineate the roles. But I also think that we're a team that likes to be integrated together. We do also have an incoming behavioral health practitioner who's going to take on a lot of that outreach and engagement. But
Mhm.
I see us really as working together as a team and then also pulling from other community resources as needed.
Okay.
When we get a referral, first thing we do is landscape who's involved in this person's
Yeah.
life.
Okay.
Where are they? Who's touching them and try to coordinate with all those people
Mm-mm.
to avoid.
And we have been working with Lynn. Yeah.
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 So two more questions.
Mhm.
One, length of time that you said simplified graphic from when they
Mm.
enter to when they exit, if you could speak to that, and then, yeah.
It kind of depends, but I mean, it can be a couple of months from the time
Okay.
that someone comes to our attention to where we have like a fully executed agreement with someone. I would say roughly is like 60 days, let's
Okay.
say.
And then they're in for a year.
Oh, they're in
And
for a
the
year.
judge can extend that up to a second year.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question, just because I can't remember what's funding this? Where's your funding coming from?
We got some initial startup funding from the state to launch.
Okay,
Ongoing funding is blended. We're using some MHSA dollars. As you guys know, with the passage of Prop 1, those dollars are changing.
mhm,
So some TBD on
Okay.
funding to be sure.
interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, I'll just
We
reiterate.
didn't get
what-
ongoing care funding from the state for this.
I know, well, no, yeah, we're used to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
we're used to
yeah.
that. Great
This,
idea.
but no money for it, but do it.
Exactly. Well, I concur with what ACM Chansky said. Thank you so much for coming down, because we
course.
kept hearing,
Thank you.
things and to understand how
Yeah,
it
it
integrates
helps
into
to
our
have the
system.
pieces.
So thank you,
And
thank
then
you. Yes.
Vincent, our contact information is on the very last slide, and
Okay.
then there's also the website. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we won't
really,
keep you
need
for the
it.
rest of the
Thank you
agenda,
so much
although
for
we'd
having
love to.
us.
Yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
being
Great.
here.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Up here.
All right, as always, we shift gears quickly in this meeting because we have a lot of, but to get to the next one is discussion of ratio utility billing systems. And just remember to the public comments, not till the end of the meeting. And at that time, you'll have 2 minutes to share whatever you want. We're always available by email and everything else. So with that, I'm handing it over to.
To Alexis,
Yeah,
our
Alexis.
amazing housing.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Could you please, not use applicants, so, those of us who aren't familiar.
So Rebs, you're about to find out about
Catch us
it.
at
Ratio
the
utility
match thing. What is that?
Well, we tried
Let me
to
look,
define MASH and we're not quite sure what
It's
that.
an intake form.
Yeah,
It's intake of providers. We're gonna move on to the next agenda item. If we get any others, write them down and we will
okay.
tell you. Okay, go ahead, Alexis.
Sure. So, over the past year, year and a half, city staff have been receiving increased calls from tenants and landlords around utility issues and utility costs. And in particular, one of the issues that emerged or came to the attention of the city in 2024 is the use of ratio utility billing systems, or RUBS. And what RUBS is so for buildings that don't have each unit individually metered for all of their utilities, it can be expensive to put that physical infrastructure in place. And so landlords can either include utilities in the overall rent charge, or what some properties do is they use this ratio utility billing system as a formula to say, here's our overall cost for this utilities, let's say for water for the property. And we're gonna charge each unit based on one of several factors. So could be the floor plan, if it's a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. It could be square footage. It could be the number of unit occupants. And we have been hearing from community members, from tenants, from advocates, and from community-based organizations about several issues that can come up with RUBS. One is that there's a lack of transparency. So tenants receive a bill and they don't know, other than generally that maybe it was calculated based on the floor plan, it's a sort of a black box about the number that's being spit out. And so it's hard to know if it's fair, if it's accurate, if you're getting a really high bill. And we have had tenants struggle with making that payment, and it functions the same as if you didn't pay non-payment of rent. So some tenants are facing eviction because of falling behind on utility payments. The other thing is that because unlike if it was included in the rent and tenants know exactly how much they have to pay each month, with RUBS, that number can fluctuate. And so particularly for low income tenants who are already on a tight budget, to have this fluctuation and not be able to plan is a real challenge. And then the last point that I want to make in terms of challenges is there are opportunities for reduced rates for people who qualify as low income, but that's when the tenant is paying the utility provider directly. So with RUBS, because the property owner is paying the utility provider, the tenant is not able to qualify for those reduced rates. We do not know how many rental properties in San Rafael use RUBS. I wish we had that data. We would need to collect it directly from property owners. The water district, for example, could tell us how many properties don't have individual metering, but they couldn't then tell us who's using RUBS versus just including it in rent. And I'd like to highlight this particularly has come up at one multifamily building where there have been really wide-ranging utilities charges, some in kind of a more maybe normal range of $200, but we've seen some $600, $700. And again, there hasn't been transparency and clarity on why tenants are getting such high bills. That property owner has implemented as of February 1st a new system with caps, and also has moved from calculating based on number of unit occupants to calculating based on number of bedrooms floor plan, which is a more straightforward way to calculate. However, I would point out that the RUBS caps that they put in place are not low caps. They're relatively high. We have one sort of building comp, another large multifamily that's using RUBS, and their average for 4 months for a 4-person household was coming in around $189 to $200. So we have, this is not unique to San Rafael. We have seen rubs come up as an issue in other cities as well, and some cities have responded by banning rubs, which is the sort of most aggressive on this handout, which will be posted online after the meeting, has some different sort of sample policies. We've also seen caps on rubs, just like this property owners are elected to do. And then some other options that cities could explore include requiring more billing transparency, so that tenants really understand how this number is coming, you know, how we're getting to this number and whether it's fair and accurate. Requiring landlords to report data to the city so that we have better data on this issue. And then lastly, increasing tenant awareness of some relevant state laws. So we're here because this is an emerging issue, and we've been talking to tenants, we've been talking to community-based organizations and to property owners, and we wanted to bring it to you for preliminary feedback. And we'll stop there.
Thank you, as always, you take a complex subject and really distill it down to the key points. I will start with Councilmember Kurt's questions before we bring in comments.
In the examples of the other jurisdictions that have banned rubs, what do they revert to? Or, because they're not just saying.
So they are saying you either have to have an individual meter for each unit, or it has to be included in the rent, in the overall rent, right? So your rent's $3,000 and there's no.
So the tenant is still gonna be responsible at some point.
Right, so they could include that in, they could include an extra amount for utilities in their rent, but at least the tenant would be able to say, I know what I'm paying every month.
Right.
And I don't have any surprise bills. And then the other piece to take into account is if you put this in place for rent stabilized properties, including sort of the state rent cap that exists in San Rafael as well. Property owners who want to kind of raise the rent in response to a ban are going to be limited in how much they can raise.
That's gonna be my next question. Okay, so it could be, an option is to ban it, but then and have a cap.
Right, and
Okay.
there is an existing state cap that would apply.
Okay.
That's it. Okay, I have a couple questions. So on the properties, and I'm sure it could be in here, but is it always multifamily, multiple 50 units plus, or do you see these in 10 units? Like if it was, obviously, if we're looking at a policy and it's citywide, is it all multifamily or multi-unit buildings? That would be a part of this?
So, I think that property owners can implement rubs in any building that doesn't have individual
Right,
meters. And
okay.
so it could be a smaller property, it could be a larger
Okay,
property.
so that's the,
Right.
okay. Okay, so it's not just the larger ones, that's where this topic has just come forward. You said in here on number 4, i.e. a rental registry. I know through the Canal Policy Working Group, we had a lot of talk about the county around a rental registry. Are they moving forward with that? I cannot recall. It was so a while ago, because I know that there's issues. I mean, that's a program. It's a program. Someone has to manage it. Someone has to set it up. Someone has to follow through. And I know the county was looking at it.
Yes, and I think the last update I have from the county is that they have been looking into what it would take to expand to include other jurisdictions, because I think that we're not maybe the only city that has asked about it.
That was gonna be my next question. Is this conversation happening in other cities like Novato, here in Marin? Do you know?
So I'm not aware that Novato specifically is looking at a rental registry, but I do know that several jurisdictions have been looking more seriously, particularly because there were the jurisdictions that had adopted rent control policies, which several have since been repealed. They needed a rental registry, and so part of that was looking at whether to keep.
Well, that part, but also, are you hearing the same issues of rub in those other communities? Because this
Oh, I'm
really
sorry.
came, no, it's a good answer as well.
Mhm.
But because we know this came forward from really one property that brought it forward. So I'm curious if this is a case of one, or is this widespread throughout all of Marin County? Just trying to get a sense of scale.
So, I have not, heard a lot from other jurisdictions so far about, issues with rubs in Marin.
Yes.
I have heard of, San Jose, Mountain View, Richmond, several sort of
Yeah.
nearby neighbors who have had challenges.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the last one is always when the city considers policy, we look at all the stakeholders. So I'm curious about the landlord input. You have both that one building, but really other landlords. I mean, for us to put a policy like this, we always talk to everybody in the room, so we understand intended and unintended consequences. Talk to me about that.
Yes, so I think that perhaps our next step would be to try to do a broader outreach to more landlords, because we've talked to a few. And we have heard some challenges around increasing utility costs from the utility providers, and then also skyrocketing insurance. And so I think from what I've heard, property owners are looking for ways to offset those additional expenses. But yes, I think we would certainly want to talk to additional property owners.
Okay. Assistant City Manager, did you have other things you want us to weigh in on or consider in this, or?
No, I think this kind of, initial feedback for this, I know Alexis is a part of like the larger item that you're preparing for council later this year around tenant protections, that this will all be kind of folded into that larger analysis. And so, we'll just continue to do the outreach with the landlords and other tenants just to get a better feel for what the issue is here. But then also, I think maybe reaching out to some of our contacts locally here in other jurisdictions to see if there's any other anecdotal evidence of how this is impacting our neighbors here in Marin. Make sure we get that incorporated there as well.
Do you have comments, Councilmember Clerk, on this item that you want to share with
No,
staff?
I think it's important that we continue the research, and I would like to know about, because there's a lot of multi-dwelling units in across all of San Rafael, so we need to look beyond
Yeah.
the canal, and so I think we need to look, and I believe, Legal Aid in Marin they're getting a lot of feedback. So I really appreciate that we're bringing it here to at least look at it. Never had heard of it before. So it'd be interesting to see as we go forward, but I do think we need to think about, continue to build out the options.
And the last part, in addition to the questions we already asked about, is just around data. So again, I already asked, is it just one property owner, or is it more to provide the context of what it is that we're considering in the scale? So narrative is good, the stories are good, and we really, this council has always asked for data. So, and this will be coming back just in general in beginning of Q2, is that when it comes to the council for discussion?
In the spring, we intend to
Okay.
come back to council. Yes.
Right. Fantastic.
Can I
Thank
throw in
you.
one more
Please,
question?
please, please.
Last minute question. Is the state looking at doing any modifications? Correct?
So from my understanding, there was a bill being proposed, but there maybe wasn't a lot of hope that it would go through.
Okay.
And by I mean a ban.
A ban,
Right,
okay, total, all right.
So we can ask our state legislators. Okay. Thank you, Alexis. Well done, and I appreciate having the information here. So thank you.
Alexis.
The next item for discussion, no votes are happening today, is on the recent policy changes in Marin County.
So
Okay.
I will tee this off.
Okay.
Since we last met as a subcommittee, the policy landscape in Marin has changed considerably amongst our neighbors as it pertains to homelessness. And I know there are a number of questions that I've heard from both of you on, but then also just generally what we're hearing from the community through the Homelessness Solutions Working Group around this issue. And so Daniel's prepared kind of just some high level questions and thoughts around what we're seeing here locally as the impact of these decisions, as well as what we're seeing happening also in Fairfax and so I'll hand it off to Daniel.
Hello, good afternoon, on this rainy day. Yeah, so going to the policy changes in terms of complete bans, the landscape is changing all across the Bay Area. This week, Fremont certified that they are going to potentially arrest people and charge them with misdemeanors, even for homeless outreach workers. So I think, as John mentioned, the landscape has changed drastically. That being said, locally here in Marin County, we're watching closely to see really what shakes out. Fairfax there's a temporary restraining order, so they cannot do anything or implement their ban till the first court date at the very
You know that
earliest.
one. Ben has
Yes.
done that for a
Yes,
year.
so
Okay.
Their first court date is scheduled for March. Also, the total number of unsheltered people is very minimal, so the effects on San Rafael are, even if it goes through, will be minimal. We are tracking though for both Novato and Fairfax to see if people are coming in from our neighboring cities. So far, zero. In terms of like service providers, their reactions are very strong from advocates and then also direct service providers. There's a lot of negativity and just a lack of compassion coming out. So our service providers have been very vocal here about how that would play out for a city like San Rafael that has a much higher homeless count. And that's really it in terms of an update from our neighboring cities.
Yeah. The one thing I will add, we'll talk about this a little later on in the agenda, is we had a chance to meet with our county counterparts earlier this week, and I had asked them specifically, what's your take on this against the county?
Gary. Oh yeah, Gary's here. I was like, wait, didn't I see Gary?
Oh,
I was so like, wait a minute, you see? I didn't see him walking in. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Thank you. So funny.
Yeah.
Oh, Gary.
Yeah, so we've had a great afternoon meeting with Gary and Lisa of our house.
Yourself.
And everyone, and I think.
Sounds like it was good.
But I think there is a shared sense of frustration around this, whereby, we recognize this is a regional issue. It's going to require regional collaboration in order to make an impact. And, for the city and the county, we're working together in this space, but to have, the second largest city of the county kind of back out of the discussion in a very abrupt way, is frustrating. So, we had a couple conversations, Novato has McGuire funds that apparently are still haven't been used. And so I think that may warrant a large conversation of whether or not having that in Novato versus elsewhere in the county may be worth looking into. So that's it, as Dana said, kind of in a nutshell. But generally, locally here, we have not seen any kind of impact on our homeless population from neighboring jurisdictions. The team's checking in on that pretty regularly with our special operations units.
Thank you. And I'll probably just want us to roll into the next to D, but I will say that Councilmember Kurtz and I do meet with the policymakers in Novato as well as with the county. So that conversation they've heard from us as well. And we did not mince words in that conversation. So more to come on that. Let's just roll right into the next one.
Yeah, so camping ordinance enforcement efforts. So we've been at this now for several months with kind of like our weekly protocol with SRPD going out and evaluating known hotspots and other parks and places in the city and issuing notices to folks that comply with the camping ordinance. And that has actually been going fairly well for us. I drove down Anderson earlier this week and it was getting a little kind of out of whack with our ordinance, but the team was out there and then they were out there today also helping to bring people into compliance with the spacing and setback requirements in the ordinance. So I think we're finding pretty good success there. And I think generally, the team, we feel like we've gotten ourselves here at a place of stasis in terms of having the sanctioned camping area open, which Mel will talk about in a little bit, as well as just knowing that we have our folks along Anderson. But in terms of what we're being told and what we're seeing, we don't have folks who are camping in parks. We have occasional pop-ups here and there on Caltrans property. But generally, the camping ordinance is giving us the tools we need to be able to respond in real time to some of the concerns that the community's letting us know about. However, regarding the camping ordinance itself, I think we all know this has become really one of the hot topics for the city outside of parking. So this is something that at our January Homelessness Solutions Working Group meeting, a good portion of the people who were there were really expressing their frustration with the city around the camping ordinance, looking at what was happening in Fairfax and Lovato and asking the question, why can't it happen here? You know, we did our best to kind of explain what our approach is here and trying to, you know, a human-centered, trauma-informed approach to dealing with individuals experiencing homelessness. But I think generally there is still some community concern around the way the ordinance is written and some of the parameters around parks and proximity to schools and playgrounds. And so those are all things that now that Andrea on board, that we're working with her and Scott Embledge to just kind of further vet, you know, what potential options are there for the city council to consider later this year when we come back in April for kind of our 6-month check-in, not only on the sanctioned camping area, but then also the camping ordinance itself. And so we'll be preparing that to come back for you all at that time. But I don't have anything that I can necessarily say right now in terms of any kind of potential changes. For the Homelessness Solutions Working Group, you know, following that very robust conversation, we're looking for our next meeting in March to really be very structured and have a structured conversation around this topic of the camping ordinance and continuing to provide people the place to the venue to provide us feedback on how the city is doing with regards to homelessness, as well as this question around community engagement and engaging the community around the camping ordinance and what we're doing in this space. Because, you know, as we look back over the last year and a half, a lot of what we were doing was a direct result of the litigation that we were in. And so making sure that we're providing the space to engage with the community on this issue that we know that they really care deeply about. And so we'll be talking with the working group about that as well. So I know that's a lot, but happy
No,
to answer any
that's
kind of
great.
questions or any comments that you may have on, yes, that basket of.
I don't have questions or comments, but we'll start with, Councilmember Prince.
Yeah, more
Questions?
comments, and
Go right-
Gary and I can both probably
right.
fill in a
Roll.
little bit.
Yeah.
Around, yesterday was the HPSC, Homeless Policy Steering Committee. And that is a group that meets that has, it's chaired by myself and Supervisor Lucan. And it has representatives from all the service providers, the county, as well as those from lived experience. And we go through, it's a required, state required convening that we have to have this group. But it's also a good opportunity. And one of the things that from those participants was, you know, obviously concerned from what's happened in Fairfax and Novato, mostly Novato. Because as you said, Fairfax is a very small conversation.
Yeah.
But the Novato is a very high level concern. As of their Tuesday night decision, and I think if you saw today's IJ, it actually lays out what they've extended. So they have, again, still a little bit of window, but they also have their no camping ordinance.
Yeah.
Which was not really called out, that they also have that. The other thing that was highlighted is from the service providers, and I think this was an action item for Gary to take, was to also work with the cities that San Rafael is the only jurisdiction that's taken advantage of the county's match.
Yeah.
And that the other jurisdictions have not. And so that, we got a lot of kudos yesterday. It was unusual. Okay.
Finally, it's
Finally. Nice. It's really nice to be on that end of it,
Yeah.
but, unfortunately, Novato was invited to attend that meeting and they did not attend. To help field some of the questions that were coming up. So Supervisor Lucan and I, you know, put it out there and let Gary take it. So it was because we're not in the position to defend or explain.
No.
And so this was something that it still needs to be discussed because it's still out there and as well as there was concerns about, so they have, Novato has Binford, which is under county, and that's being addressed. They have the Lee Gerner wind down, which now is under a 60 to 90 day clock for 7 to 9 residents there. And then they have Hamilton Marsh. What I heard when I attended Seeds of Hope is that Hamilton Marsh is not being serviced at a level that it feels like it should be, and I don't know who takes that. But when I was asked, should they contact Lynn? It was no. So, so that is another area again for Novato and Gary, I know you're gonna be the messenger, but you know, to be able to make sure that as this plays out with Novato, the responsibility, and I had not heard that they had not used the McGuire funds. I don't know if they've taken advantage of any match. I don't believe it was mentioned yesterday that they've taken advantage of any match opportunity.
McGuire funds ERF, they are using ERF for the Hamilton. They told us that at lunch.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but the McGuire is
The McGuire,
separate from
yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
appropriation.
So yeah,
Right.
ERF2 is at
Yeah.
Hamilton Marsh
Mhm.
and 28 clients enrolled, which is 100% of the population there. And they did same thing that you guys did. They had 500K from the senator and 500K from the
Okay.
county. They spent almost all of the county money and only a small portion of the McGuire. So they progressed through about half of it, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So
So
they
I-
still have some left.
I think that's my biggest concern is ensuring that as Novato is working through their situation and as you started the conversation, they basically stepped out of what we had been working on, which is a really collaborative approach in trying to come up with a cross-county or at least cross couple jurisdictions, being the largest jurisdictions, and they stepped aside.
Yeah.
So I think that puts us in a really interesting predicament.
Thank you. I just have the 3 comments and then a question. So thank you for this, Gary. Thank you for being here because I actually see you're really officially on the agenda down here. So, but thank you. So on the working group, we are hopeful. It sounds like you are formatting it a little bit different to have very specific feedback around how we might inform our revised ordinance. I want it to be specific. I don't want it to be all over the word. People hate
Yeah.
this, people like this, but to actually have actionable things that the council can utilize, our staff can utilize, that can both continue to be passionate, compassionate, trauma informed, and also effective, and also defensively, from a legal standpoint. And I mean, there's a good chance of any we have been sued every single time on every single ordinance, so the legal part is really is important, and probably we would get Judge Chen, because Judge Chen is, we've had, and I found it interesting that it's Judge Lynn who is working with Fairfax and Judge Illman for Novato. So it's kind of interesting. The landscape is definitely changing. So that some feedback around the working group, and I'm really appreciative for those group of residents who have engaged in addition to the emails, but actually shown up to be a part of the solution. The next one you had mentioned around education and engagement, the amount of misinformation out there is breathtaking. I also am on Nextdoor, and it's just really disheartening because we end up spending a lot of time trying to educate folks. So we need to do a better job of getting the right education out there.
Yes.
And that these false narratives that get out there really detract from the good work that we're doing here to move it forward. So I really would like to have, if you could have the working group talk about that specifically. And I know that Nextdoor, there are people on it who do know the truth and do have good information, but they're not going to post because then it's just a pile on. Often, not always. I think it would be interesting as Novato, and this is what we said when we met with Novato, this erroneous belief, and I just have to say it for the record and for the public, the fact that if banning homeless people housed every single one provided services, we'd be the first ones to do it. But it's actually, that's not the way it works. And so I want to be clear that that is an ineffective policy. And I don't actually know what Novato's doing with it, but that's what we're trying to find out because they don't know either. And the other part about that that's really key is here, and you talked about enforcement. I'm really proud of the fact that our enforcement matches with our ordinance rules. Because what we don't want to have is an ordinance that's unenforceable. And so Novato did give us feedback in terms of their enforcement. I don't want to repeat it because it was a private conversation. I don't think they could make that same comment that their ordinance and their enforcement match. And I think in San Rafael, we need to have that. We're not going to put an ordinance out there that's not enforceable. That's poor policy and poor governance. And then the last question, so those are the feedback. And then the last one is, when will the entire council be updated? So as well as the public, and I know we had the 6-month time frame for a revised ordinance. Would that all come together in April, May kind of meeting is what we're thinking
So
about?
we are targeting the first meeting in April for that
Okay.
next big update for you
Okay.
all. So that's what the newly formed Community Services Division is working towards.
Division of 1, well, and plus.
Celebration and,
Oh, Officially all, and I didn't know if you were,
Official team.
I didn't know if you were cut in half, you're
No,
really what,
no.
okay.
Just one follow on.
Please, go
So when we implemented the SAFE program, help me, acronym.
It's been for everyone, our mobile mental health outreach team.
Team. So we, at that time, I had requested, what would it look like if we were able to go 24/7? And with all the changes happening and everything else, I know we are today 12/7, 8 AM to 8 PM. And as we're going into budget season and the county's lovely offer of matching, what would that potentially look like if we wanted to expand SAFE?
And extend,
And
because our
extend,
funding ends in a
right.
year
yeah,
or plus, right?
We can definitely,
Great question.
I think we can look into that. I think that's a conversation that
Yeah.
I can have. Down the line, but yeah, as the budget kickoff was this morning, so timing of it is spot on.
Oh, I knew it. I'm right on ready. Fantastic, well.
oh, I was just gonna say that SAFE has been one of those programs that has been a real huge, to me, a huge game changer. And also for the community. And I mean, I've had to use it where I've called and I'm within, I'll go into a store, come back and they're already there. And say there's somebody there, over the holidays, there was somebody over in a parking lot who decided to create their own little fire, and that's probably not a good idea. So, but yeah, it's huge, and talking to them, and they contacted me directly and gave me the update. So it was really great.
Yeah, no, we love.
We
the
all call them.
safety.
I call them
We
too.
call
I know,
them.
they're on speed dial, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate that. Let's just keep rolling on this. The next one is update on Encampment Resolution Fund Round 3, also known as ERF implementation. I think this is Mahone.
Yep.
Pat,
Mhm.
turn it to Mel.
Yeah, so yes, I'll provide an update on our encampment resolution funding round 3 or ERF 3. So this is the grant that we received in partnership with the county for nearly $6 million. So the award was announced, I think in April of 2024, and the county received those funds in the fall. And then we entered into contract for our portion of the city-led operations in November of 2024. So again, it was nearly $6 million. We so far have expensed or contracted about 1.3 million of those funds. And we're projecting an additional about 1.7 or so. So by the end of the fiscal year, in June, we will have contracted or expensed a little over $3 million of those funds, which we have to do 50% of expenditure based on the grant. So this grant supports the safety and housing needs for individuals in the Mahone Creek area, people who were residing in that overall encampment area in early 2024. It also covers operations for the current sanctioned camping area on a portion of the Mahone Creek path. So just to provide an update from the sanctioned camping area, it has a capacity of 50 participants. Which we've had 50 participants for about the last 2 months or so of the program. Currently today we have 48 participants. We have had a few folks exited from the program recently. For instance, a couple people, it was for physical altercations that they got into. One person, they were away from the site for an extended period of time without any kind of notice or communication. We have had 2 individuals move into the program in the last week that were eligible, and we're expecting 1 additional person to move in at the end of this week. Let's see. So approximately 25% of the participants currently have case management at the site through various local agencies. St. Vincent de Paul recently was contracted by the County of Marin to provide housing-based case management services to ERF3 eligible individuals for that overall grant, which includes the sanctioned camping area. Right now that contract is for one case manager, and St. Vincent is in the hiring process for this role. So the county will be contracting with St. Vincent for 2 additional housing-based case managers. So we'll have 3 for the overall grant. And that also includes individuals who are in the sanctioned site as well. And I think that updated contract is anticipated in early spring. Participants right now are at varying stages of their pathway to housing. So really great news. We have one person who's currently applying for workforce development housing through Homeward Bound's new development site. And we have another participant who currently has a voucher and is already in process of identifying and looking for housing for himself. So those are really exciting developments. The site's program management team, which is FS Global, are coordinating an effort along with outreach service providers, those existing housing-based case managers, to really ensure that all participants are document ready for their housing. This is a really important step so that the majority of folks in the site will be eligible and are eligible for permanent supportive housing. And so they're going to need some form of a housing voucher. And so it's really a great aspect for them to get ready for that so that when they receive those or a property comes up, that they'd be able to apply and get into that much more quickly. Additionally, since moving into the sanction camp, 3 participants have successfully gained employment, just demonstrating the stability and opportunities that it's brought for people. Many participants are thriving with improved social health, benefiting from a safe, stable place to sleep and store personal belongings. Participants have been able to reconnect with medical services, either outreach or FS Global has taken people to different medical appointments. And they've improved connection with service providers and are really rebuilding those practices for housing stability that'll help people transition into permanent housing. We've been releasing monthly homelessness newsletter updates. And so we released one in January that outlines some of these successes. We're going to continue to be doing that. And the county also is doing social media and different campaigns for getting that success story out there. And if anyone is interested in donations to the sanctioned camping area, they can reach out to the End Homelessness at cityofsanrafael.org email if they want to contact about that.
Fantastic. Questions, go ahead.
The new residents coming into Mahone, are those ones from San Rafael on Anderson or?
Yeah, so it's because people need to have specifically been residing in that area or currently residing in that area. So they were already on that list to be outreached to. Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was a great update. I'm curious if we have a dashboard of the data, like you're giving that out, but how are we, other than people that might sit and watch this meeting and the social media campaign, thinking about that, but do you have a dashboard? Are we planning on doing that where people can go? And I say dashboard, it can be presented any which way.
Yeah, I think that's something we can add to our website to sort of keep up with those statistics.
And then the other part, you had said 25% have case management. We know when we had our first sanctioned service area, SSA, service sanctioned area, back during the pandemic, by the time it was disbanded, I think nearly 95%, 97 had case management. I was under the impression that part of what the goal is here is to get 100% under case management. Like people that are in there, they actually know this is the path. It's not a hangout time. It's a hangout and do the next step. Is that?
Yeah, that will happen eventually once people are hired, once the contracts fully go through the board of supervisors. And there will be an additional outreach person. I don't know if they'll mention that as well as part of those contracts.
Okay.
Might be a Gary question. The federal decisions right now, we did hear at HPSC that housing vouchers are on hold. Is that right? What's the federal?
The Marin Housing Authority has been in voucher shortfall since summer of last year. They originally predicted that would last through June of this year, but are predicting it may last longer with some of the chaos happening at the national level. So we're looking at creative strategies to get people into housing
Here for
in the absence of vouchers.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that thorough update. I'm sure all of us, I can't help but think as it's pouring rain with sideways wind,
Mhm.
that we want folks housed, number one. We still want the tiny village where that's not on the agenda, so we're not gonna talk about it. And barring all of that, having a safe place where there is both security and case management is what we have, and that is making a difference. So we appreciate that. It is
Absolutely.
the coldest, wettest winter that we've had here in a while.
Yeah, and it's been a real testament, like FS Global, they participated in the development of the site and are doing the ongoing operations. So even in this storm last week, when we had 70-mile-per-hour winds, like nothing tipped over, there was no damage. And it's really a testament to them being on site, having that operational capacity.
The tents are holding up in a way that I think it's beating all of our
Mhm.
expectations, which is pretty phenomenal.
Mhm.
So.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any other comment? We'll go to the last one because I'm sure there'll be public
Yeah.
comments. I want to make sure we have time for that. So the last one is update on city counter partnerships. Can I just say how happy I am to even have that as an agenda item? Because we know that none of this work happens in isolation. We know that, we're not set up structurally through HHS to have this. So having you at the table is incredible. So thank you for being here. And I don't know who's gonna.
I'll take it, but Gary's
Yeah.
welcome to chime in. Just also want to express appreciation to Gary and his team. I think just having the regular partnership meetings that we were doing has been really helpful for just building the relationships and also just like troubleshooting some of the things that both of our agencies are having to face regarding to this. But as I said earlier, we met with Gary and the team on Monday of this week to just check in around ERF implementation, talking through some of the contracting items relating to housing-based case managers that Mel and Daniel had raised. And then for the bulk of the meeting, we spent the time talking about what we consider like the phase 2 of the ERF. So this is the interim shelter, the tiny home village project. We met in December and the county was willing to provide, access to their real estate team who has been out helping to look for sites. And so they had presented a couple sites for us to look at that could be a potential spot for an interim shelter. We're still working with that team to kind of fine tune what they're looking for their sites. It's some of the things they kind of pulled up. It was like, I call it Goldilocks scene in the sense where it's like this site's too small, this site's too big. Just so trying to just like figure out where could we do something like this for this program. We're also working on, I think, this broader discussion. Now that we have a partnership agreement in for ERF, a larger roles and responsibilities document, what the county's doing, what the city's doing, where are the gaps, and how do we bridge those maybe disagreements, or how do we
Disconnects, you mean?
yeah, disconnects, or
Just fine.
how do we take advantage of those opportunities to, I think, better align how we work together. And so that's something that, we're continuing to work on internally and with them. But as it relates for you two, one of the things that we're looking to do is hold the next joint city-county partnership meeting in April. And so I know Christine and Derek have been talking about that. And so that's one of the things that is on our radar.
Right.
So we will be looking to line up the conversation around the roles and responsibilities, as well as give an update on where we are for the interim shelter project. The thing that I'll flag regarding the interim shelter project is under ERF, under the grant, we have to encumber 100% of the funds by June 30th. So if we are going to stand up an interim shelter, then that means we need to get moving on identifying a site and getting those dollars under contract for whether it's a lease or purchasing of a site, the purchasing of any of the program assets, all those things. So we are very mindful of the fact that in terms of what we have to perform under ERF, we have less and less time to finally get a site. But we're working at it. I know in addition to our work with the county, we're working with Josh Townsend, who has continued to bring in additional sites for us above and beyond what we have discussed, at least in the last year or so. So we're working very hard to do this. Daniel is going out to do like a parade of sites tomorrow
I think we have a spreadsheet on that we can share. Did you share that spreadsheet? I know we-
They have the spreadsheet.
Okay, we have the spreadsheet.
They have all the same materials that we have, so, David Spear and his team know what we've already looked at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's the real
so,
estate.
we're under every rock we can find.
Oh, wait, let's see
Oh,
if
sorry.
Gary wants to add on. Do you want to add anything?
No, that was a perfect summary. I think I would just add appreciation. I think unique at these meetings, you have the county administrator, his deputy, the HHS director and her deputy, and myself. You also have city manager, assistant city manager, community services director, staff. I think it's an unparalleled commitment, of folks in the room at the highest leadership levels of both organizations. And I think that's what helps make it work.
Yeah.
So appreciate, from both sides that we're able to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Olivia.
I do, and it sort of
Yeah.
hasn't been really fleshed out in my mind so much, so bear with me here. I'm starting to see the work that we've been doing on the home path. On one hand, it's fantastic because it's a pilot, right? In a sense, it's a pilot because we want to be able to move from that to something more permanent. And maybe there's an opportunity to also bring back sort of that conversation back to the solutions working group in terms of as they see the effect of the goodness, we say the goodness of the Mahone Path project, how that could apply to a future development. I mean, to me, this was a test case in a way. So that's part one, and part two is, I think with that feeling and knowledge, because I never know, because we're not day to day on what's happening at my home, right? And so, but to hear the positive of this works. It works with an FS Global. It works with a 24/7 security. It works to get, which is the goal, to get people into housing and get people able to leave their site to go work, right? Because if you're living on the street, you can't leave your belongings. So it's working. I mean, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think, so I'm talking to the choir, but I mean, I think it's really showing me that we heard it works, but we're seeing it and we're seeing the data that it works. So with that said, I think I'm more inclined to really look at the opportunities that are available in San Rafael to set up something. And I think I'm hoping the community also sees this as a good opportunity based on the traction we have with Mahone. It doesn't say that, we don't have, the perfect property is not going to pop up. Just like we had to, and we've shared this a couple of times in different forums, we had to make a very conscious decision to give up something. And we gave up Mahone Path because it was the right thing to do. And it has been the right, I still feel it has been the right thing to do. And I feel like establishing something more permanent is going to be the right thing to do. And so I'm really happy you're working with the real estate people to see, because what happens behind those walls at Mahone, we don't have visibility, nor do we have the expertise. And ideally we need to, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get out of the business, but I mean, that would be the ideal if we could start making it us. So you can all do sort of, this has been now a full-time for multiple years in managing this. And I think if we really set up something formal and identify the right place, and it's still, I think, going to be a give. And I think we're going to look to the county for a lot of support to be able to make something happen. And because it will help us. And we need to, we're not going to leave money on the table, right? That seems like the worst thing in the world, to leave money on the table. So we're going to have to, I think we're still going to have to give. And maybe we're at that point that we have to give.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
And that's, again, sorry, that was very much. No, it's good to have the comments. I just have two questions before we go to public comment. So I know the outcomes of the city counter partnership have been very oriented around the success of Mahone Path. I'm curious in those conversations, is there also a discussion of a shared vision, really talking about what Councilmember Kurtz is about, what that's looking like. I know that you are required by state law to have the homelessness plan or strategic vision, so it doesn't have to be that granular, but to me, that would be something I'd be really interested, because we have our kind of our vision, so I'm curious, has that been talked about? Because we're dealing with the here and now, but is
Yeah.
that an outcome that you see coming from this group?
100%, and that's the
Okay.
one thing, and Gary will know, because I go into those meetings and I say, what happens after ERF?
Okay,
Because we're gonna
okay.
start planning for that now, because the money is gonna run out, and so. We have had conversations around doing some sort of partnership around the development of like a joint city county homelessness action plan that
Okay.
articulates what
Okay.
that vision is. But you know, in order for us to do that, we want to also make sure that these roles and responsibilities are very clearly outlined, so we know, you know, who's doing what at the dance. Before we go down the road and actually engage with the community on what an action plan would look like. But that's something that once we kind of handle this, phase 2 discussion around finding a site or figuring out what we do with the money over the next couple of months, pivoting to that conversation.
What I like about that one is the shared, and when we're getting our vision on the same table, and it provides a mechanism going forward where the cities that are participating, San Rafael, actually benefits from that through funding, and cities that don't participate, I didn't say Novato out loud, but if you're not participating and part of that shared strategic plan, that you actually might not have as much access to resources or to capacity building.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my other question, that meeting sounds really fun with a lot of really awesome people. Are you ever gonna invite the policymakers into that space, or is that?
No.
Well, so, I mean,
How would you bring in, because you have the two of us that are subcommittee for the city, and then Supervisor Lukin and Supervisor Sackett for the county. So I'm just curious, because we know staff's working, doing all the work, right? You guys do all the stuff. No, but then we have the staff. I want to have that be a little bit more formal.
I know.
And maybe that's just
Yeah.
we talked about at some point.
well, and I think that's what the intent is behind the meeting in April with the supervisors and you two, is that.
Oh, that was. I didn't realize. Oh, I didn't know
It
that.
would be.
Yeah,
it would
no,
be-
that's for you
it would be-
specifically.
Oh, I missed that. What, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we don't, so we don't have a
Okay.
date for it yet, but we're
Okay.
targeting early April. and so
Got
it'll
it. I
be
missed that.
You two, and then Supervisor Sack
Okay.
and Lucan. And that'll be our next opportunity to kind of come back and say,
Okay.
here's what we have to show, and also maybe bring forth. You know, some higher level policy questions that we're gonna need guidance from.
Right.
Okay.
You all, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I thought.
No,
that
no,
was-
no, I- no, I-
There's so many committees.
I know.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So let's, we're gonna just roll right along, because I think there's public comment, and I'm watching the time. We have till 2:25. I want to land this airplane on time. Future agenda items, can we just say we trust staff and?
Yep.
Okay, I think we talked about continuing to build on what we've done. The last part of our meeting is public comment, and any of the folks in the room are welcome to address the subcommittee. You'll have 2 minutes. We invite you to say your name, but you're not required to, and don't be shy, because don't be shy.
Thanks, Mayor Cullen. My name is Dave Mariottini. I moved to San Rafael in 2015. Been here about 10 years. I'm a father of 3. I have an 8-year-old. I live in Sun Valley and on the Park side. I'm a coach for San Rafael soccer. I'm a neighbor of Andrea's. I want to congratulate Andrea on her new job. Congratulations, Andrea. I'm here because you guys encouraged us as residents to become involved.
Thank you.
I grew up in the South Bay near where Diane Bishop, the former police captain, you grew up in Los Altos. And it's funny, when I say Los Altos, people assume that I come from money. I used to go to the principal's office in junior high to get my lunches because our family didn't have a lot of money. But the reason I'm here today is because of my 8-year-old, because of the children that I coach in soccer and see, and I'm also on the emergency preparedness committee with Amy Lankover, Gina Silvestri, and people you know. Gina's father is amazing. So I'm here. Look, you guys are all extraordinary. Okay, each and every one of you, for what you get paid. You guys are amazing. You're extraordinary, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Okay. Since I spoke at the last city meeting by microphone, I've had people come up to me and approach me and say, "Oh my gosh, I feel the same way." We try to play tennis at Alvin Park tennis courts. We try to, walk the safe way. I call it the unsafe way. Hopefully someday it won't be the unsafe way. But the main message that I want to get out is a couple things. One is that I realize that this is a complex issue of homelessness. Ending homelessness and banning camping in public parks like Crystal Park, which is where I live, or next to where I live. Someone said, "Do you live in Crystal Park?" No, I don't live in Crystal Park. I live next to Crystal Park. Those are two separate issues, right? And it's very complex, and you don't need to be wealthy to keep a clean campsite.
Sorry, I was taking time. Do you have one more sentence you want to say?
Yeah,
And
my
then-
last sentence is safety, and I'm wondering if Marine Health and Human Services is doing any type of safe soil testing, Mahone Creek water testing, to make sure that things like bird flu, coronavirus, flu, anything else, because are being tested around the soils.
you.
Thank you for your
Yep,
time.
thank you. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my name's Annie Sawhill. I'm a former trustee with the Miller Creek School District. It was called Dixie when I was a trustee, and then also was the co-chair of the North San Rafael planning process. I've lived in San Rafael since 1986, and I absolutely love San Rafael and Marin County. I too want to applaud the people around this table. I am so impressed with what you've accomplished. What strikes me deeply, though, is how little of this information has gotten out. I mean, I think just people call me just for whatever reason, because they know I've been active in the past, and the amount of disinformation out there is staggering. And even me, when I looked on the city's website to try to find out information about the homeless, subcommittee, the working group, and so on, I had a hard time finding just the basic information about the ordinance and things like that. And stuff that you just shared about what's happening in the home. I mean, that is stuff that needs to get out there. What you mentioned about Mahone Creek being like a pilot program, Matt, that's music to my ears, and it would communicate so much to the hysteria that is out there, which is, oh my God, they're just willy-nilly gonna let people park in the park next to where I live. I mean, I don't know why there's so much misinformation out there. And I know that you're trying really, really hard, and I know how difficult it is. Because I remember when we used to suggest policy changes, the time when we would be voting on it, we'd get a big crowd saying, why haven't we heard about this? And we'd say, we've publicized it, we've put flyers out, we've got public meetings. So I understand how hard it is to get the word out there, but oh my gosh, that's gotta be primary. Because I feel so reassured being here, listening to what's been going on.
Thank you. And I just have one question. Do you happen to subscribe to the newsletter? Because that is a primary vehicle. So and again, this is, because it's public comments, and we're not going to get into it, but we did talk about education. And if we were to have a goal of amping up newsletter correspondence by 30% over the whatever, because the newsletter answers a lot of what you just heard. So,
Oh my God.
so thank you for answering that. Okay. Anybody else like to speak? Oh, here. Yeah.
Also Alondra here, she primarily speaks Spanish, so, and I didn't notify, but I'm happy to help translate, or if there's a way that.
You can help and yeah.
Okay, well, Alondra. Yo solo.
Buenas tardes. Vengo sobre robos que estábamos viendo como soy parte de los inquilinos. Siento que lo justo es como dividir los gastos. Si yo alquilo y somos 2 adultos, entonces justo que me cobren menos. En donde yo vivo están cobrando más y no están dividiendo eso como sobre la unidad, si es grande o es pequeña.
So Alondra comes as a tenant. Where she lives, she has dos miembros de su familia. Okay, so she lives with 2 other people, and where she lives there, she's paying a lot more or similar to some neighbors who have for RUBS utility that are similar to some neighbors that have a lot more people in their unit that doesn't have to do with their usage of the utility.
Y sobre eso está la veracidad y los factores de la veracidad es incluir los ocupantes o metros cuadrados de la habitación para dividir los gastos. Si la unidad es pequeña, entonces tiene que ser menos. Yo vivo en un estudio y me están cobrando lo mismo que una habitación de 4 ocupantes. Siento que es injusto y no hay como un medidor del agua gas. Entonces siento que es injusto, tanto como inquilinos como para el dueño del edificio. Siento que sería como menos, que le dijera justicia, se puede decir, para ser justos, tanto como pagar lo que yo tengo que pagar, ni más ni menos.
Okay, so where she lives, yeah, there's other households that for water, gas and water, gas and sewer are paying like the same amount. They've recently readjusted the amounts and the other households are paying pretty much the same amount as her. And she thinks it would be more fair if if they were calculated in a different way.
Based on the number of
Based on the
occupants.
number of occupants, yeah, and there's various ways that roads, sorry, I'm having trouble remembering all this, but there's various ways that roads can charge, and she thinks it would be more fair to do based on the number of occupants. Thank you.
Y sobre eso, estuvimos hablando con un grupo de inquilinos, por parte de un grupo, y no estamos de acuerdo con lo que estamos pagando. Siento que es injusto para nosotros, porque en ningún momento en el contrato dice cuánto iba a pagar de utilidades. Siento que es justo como para el que nos está arrendando, como para nosotros, saber cuánto se va a pagar.
So she thinks that it would be fair, both, and she said before, both for the landlord and for her to say exactly how much, because when she signed the contract, she did not know, the contract did not say how much she would be paying for utilities. So she thinks, she was talking with her other tenants, her group of tenants, and she thinks that there should be, when they sign the contract, they should be able to know exactly how much they're going to pay for utilities.
And then just final thoughts. I gave you 4 minutes because there's 2 of you and you're helping to translate. So if you just have any final words.
Algo más, porque nos dio más tiempo, porque después.
Y quisiéramos ver que cómo podríamos mejorar eso para llegar a como hablar con el dueño para que sea justo. Que ponga como yo y mi hijo no pasa ahí, pasa en la escuela y yo trabajo. ¿Y por qué voy a pagar lo mismo? ¿Por qué pagar $300 y no pagar menos? Y voy a pagar lo mismo de una familia que son 5. Siento que es injusto.
So they want to talk to the owner and figure out something to come to a solution about this issue. Her son spends all day at school, she spends all day at work. And they don't feel that they should be paying that much utilities based on that.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for doing that. Did you want to say anything? No. Oh, did you?
Could I give my own public comment?
Sure. Can you keep it shorter?
You have to land the plane.
I'm trying to land the plane. But go ahead, talk really
I
fast. Yes,
appreciate
of
it.
course.
So, Joel, I'm a housing policy advocate at Legal Aid of Marin. And yeah, here to talk about RUBS, which I think of as like an additional cost beyond rent, what tenants are already paying in their contract. It's well documented that this is an increasing business practice, primarily among corporate landlords. And just to appreciate Alexis's presentation, we've seen these complaints in Novato, Larkspur, Tiburon, and in San Rafael have documented RUBS use in 13 buildings, including in North San Rafael, and a lot of the same landlords. But based on, these same landlords using RUBS across their buildings, we estimate that it could be 1,379 units, or around 12% of San Rafael rental housing that use RUBS. And so why is it harmful? It's not just when abused, like, some have made the case for in certain buildings. But for all tenants, because when tenants sign contracts, they do not know how much they will be paying for in the rental housing. And these contracts can be up to 80 pages long these days, with multiple addendums in terms of how utilities are calculated. But even in those addendums, if someone were to read it clearly, there's no listing about how much per month. So because we're in this housing crisis here, I just think it's more critical than ever that when tenants sign a lease, they know exactly how much they will be paying, because they have the right to know how cost burden they will be. And I just reminder that like if costs do increase for landlords, they do have the right to set the rent higher and or raise the rent 8.8% this year, which is a transparent way to, recoup their costs that they say. So cities across the state have banned RUBS. And another way to say that is they've made rental housing costs clear and looking forward to collaborating more to take steps towards that goal.
Thank you. Well done to get it under 2 minutes. Did you want to say anything?
No, I don't know. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, then, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you both. Thank you, Andy, for your comments. Look forward to seeing you all at future meetings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you go to town hall?